This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, whoa, that was alarming.
Yes, it was.
Now, everyone, thank you all for being here today. What a joy. I mean, gosh darn it, we're going to have a blast today.
Absolutely, especially since we are recording this on the birthday of none other than the lady of Creep Street,
That's right.
Maureen Bogey.
Thank you so much. Today is my birthday.
That's right.
And we are out here popping off, just recording horde.
Amen.
We love it. And thank you all so much for being so lovely and just being wonderful. You all are my birthday present.
Absolutely.
Now, if you are a fan of the cast, or if you're looking for something to give me as a gift,
Yes.
I would personally love it if you would like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, slap us with those 5 stars.
And it costs nothing.
It costs nothing. It's just a nice little gesture, and it helps out the show, and we would just so appreciate it. Now, if you want to be kept up on what we're doing, what we're up to, you can follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We are on TikTok under Creep Street Podcast as well. We have a Facebook, and on our Facebook, we have a subgroup called Citizens of the Milky Way, and it's just a little forum where anyone can post memes, articles, stories, ask questions, share stories, anything like that. We highly recommend you check that out. Once again, it is called Citizens of the Milky Way. Now, we know that one episode a week is not enough.
Oh my God. Is brushing your teeth once a week good enough? No.
You need a steady supply of Creep Street running through your veins at all times.
Yes.
And the good news is, we have this figured out for you already.
Sounds like we do.
It is at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. And there you can get all sorts of wonderful bonus content on there. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
We have movie reviews, movie commentaries, interviews, short stories, full bonus episodes, and just anything and everything in between.
Hell yeah.
So you can check that out once again at patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. Now, last week we talked about, I always want to say Larry David, but that's never his name. It's always been Larry Ray.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it actually hasn't always been Larry Ray, but
It was Larry Greco, then
Yeah.
it was Larry Ray.
yeah, but you know what I mean. And wow, what a absolute top tier piece of human trash.
I mean, it's whoo! I mean, he takes the dang cake.
Yeah, for real. And I mean, god dang, what a wild time. But thank you all so much for listening to that episode and reaching out and telling us about it and everything. We so appreciate it. I mean, wow. I'm so glad you all were informed and found the episode to be, it's not enjoyable. That's not the right word.
Illuminating.
Illuminating. Yes, we love that. But today
Yes.
is a different kind of vibe.
Oh.
A different ambiance.
Yes, it is.
A different little something.
Oh, yeah.
Dylan, tell us, let us know, keep us in the loop. What is even going on? What is our episode on today?
All aboard, sailors, because today we are talking about the haunting of the Queen Mary. Oh man, this is one people have been wanting. This is a big one.
Mm-hmm. Big time. And we're excited to finally do it. And I mean, this is a big one.
It's a big one. It's a very big one. Folks, my source was a book called Ghosts of the Queen Mary by Brian Clune and Bob Davis. And boy, oh boy, this episode is a long time coming.
Big time. Long time, big time.
The haunting of the ship known as the Queen Mary is one of those mega famous hauntings that almost everyone has heard of. Nearly every paranormal investigation show on the planet has visited the RMS Queen Mary. They just keep coming back. It's like an endless well, because many folks, many who dabble in the paranormal, say we have yet to even discover all of the ghosts who may be on board.
Whoa, okay.
Yes.
In ghosts, and I'm sure we'll get into this as we go forth, but boats/ships are known to be some of the most haunted places anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, consider it's sitting on water. And what do we know about water? Water is apparently supposed to enhance paranormal activity.
Also, it is a mode of transportation, and we know that that is a whole thing with with ghosts, because you're traveling from here to there. You are neither here nor there. You're kind of in this other zone.
Yes. And it's a very in-depth story. And I am so excited to dive into this mystery with everybody. Let's set sail for terror. Now, while the building of the RMS Queen Mary didn't begin until December of 1930, our story begins around the end of the First World War.
Yikes.
At the end of World War I, there was a huge uptick in passenger travel across the North Atlantic between America and Europe. At the center of this was the Cunard Line Company, which had been founded in Southampton, England. Well, after the end of the Great War, bigger, faster, and more luxurious cruise ships began to come more and more out of other European nations such as France and Germany. Naturally, the Cunard Line began to overhaul designs for a new fleet of ships that would rival those of their competitors. Well, everything was going smoothly until the Great Crash of '29.
Uh-oh.
And the world's economy went to shit. The following year, on December 1st, 1930, despite economic uncertainty, the first keel plates of Job 534 were laying. This would obviously go on to become the vessel known as the Queen Mary. But the pains of the economic depression finally came down hard on the Cunard Line Company, as it did almost everyone, and work on the project was halted, and thousands of shipyard workers lost their jobs. This is where things already begin to get a little bit creepy. Before even the dang ship was built, 2 men who were working on Job 534 went missing right there on the shipyard. No one saw them leave, though. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. In the coming years, the Cunard Line had to fight for its own survival. Building new ships was completely out of the question. And while the aging ships they did have were in good working order, the cost of maintenance and upkeep was proving to be unsustainable. The company pleaded with the British government for financial assistance in order to stay afloat. But the Cunard Line wasn't the only shipping company on hard times, of course not. Its largest rival, the White Star Line, was on hard times as well, and folks may recognize the name White Star Line as it was the company that built and operated the famous Titanic.
Uh-oh, hello.
The government suggested that Cunard join up with its biggest rival, and because both companies were desperate, they did just that, and thus the Cunard White Star Line was born. Work on what would become the RMS Queen Mary resumed in April of 1934. And when they got back to work was when they discovered what happened to the 2 shipyard men who went missing 3 years earlier.
Oh no.
Their bodies were found in close proximity to each other down in the lower sections near the double hull, which is where the men had worked before the building was suspended. The families of the men had always assumed that the men had killed themselves, perhaps due to the economic devastation of losing their jobs. But examining the bodies, there was nothing to indicate that the men had committed suicide. In fact, to this day, no one is really sure what actually killed the 2 men. There is perhaps only one possible cause. You see, one of the men was a welder, and near their bodies was his welding torch.
perhaps the gas from the torch had built up to dangerous levels and the men asphyxiated. But these guys were experienced welders. They would know the dangers of these things. Unless perhaps they used the gas to commit suicide, but who knows? The point is, the grim history of the Queen Mary had already begun.
Ooh, very strange. Huh, okay, yeah, a very spooky, scary start.
Yes. One spirit that is said to haunt the ship is known by the name John Henry. Many believe that this is the spirit of one of the men who was found dead there. There is also tale of a welder who was working down in the lower levels of the ship and accidentally welded himself inside without any means of escape.
Oh my God, what?
Where he eventually died.
Oh my God.
It is said that the company, with permission from the man's family, held funeral services right there on the ship and just left the man's body sealed away, as this was a way to save time and money.
No.
Now, the author of my source believes that this particular story about the welder sealing himself up is actually just an urban legend. But the two men who were found dead after 3 years, that really did happen.
Okay.
But regardless, it's down in the lower sections of this ship that people will often report hearing tapping noises, especially near what is called the green room, near the boiler room stage. Many say these tapping noises are the spirits of those two dead men. Now the British government was a major stockholder in the Cunard White Line Company, and as such, an official from the company would have to come to the palace to show reports of the company's standing. Well, apparently during one of these meetings, King George V asked what the name of the newest ship was going to be. And apparently it was originally intended to be called the RMS Queen Victoria. So the king asked the official from the company, what's this going to be called? And the official from the company said, "We are pleased to inform you that Cunard wishes your approval to name our newest and grandest liner after England's greatest queen." And before he had a chance to say Queen Victoria, the king responded saying, "My wife shall be pleased at the compliment, gentlemen."
Oh my God, hilarious.
And thus the ship was christened the Queen Mary.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm blessed for that. And it's good to know, because I was a little confused, because I always was like, Queen Mary, like what? And then I was like, do they mean like Bloody Mary? Like Queen Mary from,
no.
like the Tudor Queen?
The more recent Mary.
And I was like, weird, but now it makes more sense. Okay.
Yes. On September 26th of 1934, the real Queen Mary officially christened the ship herself, and it was slid into the River Clyde to thunderous cheers from spectators. But while the structure of the ship was complete, they still had to deck this baby out. Over the next 20 months, the Cunard White Line spared no expense, making the Queen Mary the most luxurious ship in the world. Famous artists of the time were commissioned to paint murals, create sculptures, etch glass, and make these lovely bronze doors, and in all it had a very beautiful Art Deco style, very pretty. By the time they were done, the ship had 3 classes of accommodations, 2 pools, 3 nurseries, elevators, and entertainment salons for all 3 classes, first, second, and third. She apparently also served gourmet meals to every passenger, regardless of class, but quick side note, class-based nurseries? That just sounds bad.
Yeah, that's rough.
What is the first class nursery as compared to the third class nursery look like?
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Yikes. The RMS Queen Mary would set off on her maiden voyage on May 27th, 1936. The captain even wanted to take a shot at the Blue Riband, which was an award given for the fastest crossing of the Atlantic. But
oh no.
Because of this thick fog on their first journey, the captain was unable to attempt that because it would be unsafe. But on their second voyage across the Atlantic, the captain seized the day by making the fastest time, taking the award from the French ship, the Normandy.
Ooh.
So Queen Mary, pretty much right out the gate, is the fastest motherfucker on the planet when it comes to ships.
Oh my God.
She's hot to trot.
Very good, Mary.
Now, while the Queen Mary was very modern, it was built in a way that was much like older ships. I know nothing about shipbuilding, by the way, but I guess the Queen Mary, because of her design, was more prone to turbulence than a lot of other modern cruise liners.
Oh no.
And it soon earned the nickname Rolling Mary.
Oh no.
This is so stupid, but during the ship's construction, it was decided that handrails would take away from the lovely aesthetic they had designed the ship with, Well, because of this, passengers were often tossed around like toys during rough seas with nothing to hang on to.
Oh my God.
In fact, this was the cause of a very awful tragedy that occurred on board. There was a staircase near the front of the ship, and third-class kids on board had come to love sliding down the rail along the staircase. As I'm sure the third-class kids probably didn't have as many options for entertainment as the other kids did. Well, during a rough storm, a little girl was sliding down the staircase when all of a sudden the ship hit a huge wave. The girl was tossed off the railing, hitting the ground hard.
Oh no.
When the ship medical staff got there, they realized the poor girl had broken her neck, and she was pronounced dead.
Oh God.
Today, folks who visit the Queen Mary often report seeing this apparition of a child near the staircase, and if approached, she quickly vanishes. When the ship docked back in England after this trip, handrails and other things were installed all over the ship, and staircase railings were replaced with rails that had knobs on them as a way to prevent the kids from sliding down them.
Oh yeah.
In the coming years, the Queen Mary's history was rather non-eventful after that. Both she and her rival, the French ship the Normandy, would capture the blue ribbon back and forth from each other over and over. This was a time of huge increase in the amount of people traveling across the ocean, and the Queen Mary saw her share of many famous passengers, some of which included the likes of Clark Gable, David Niven, Cary Grant, and Greta Garbo. But that wasn't all. The Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and even the King himself, sailed on the ship.
Dang, okay.
It had become very well known in its day. But World War II was on the horizon, and the company quickly noticed the amount of folks who were sailing one way from Europe to America was skyrocketing. Many of these passengers were immigrants relegated to third class, and because of the Queen Mary's reputation of feeding third-class passengers well, she quickly became the favorite. On September 1st, 1939, the captain of the ship got word of Germany's invasion of Poland. 2 days later, on September 3rd, the captain was notified that the British government had officially declared war on the Third Reich, along with other nations such as France, Australia, and New Zealand. When passengers on board were notified, it said they cried out in unison, "God save the King." And Bob Hope happened to be on board that day as well, and followed up the shout of "God save the King" with "and the Queen Mary."
Oh.
The Queen Mary docked in New York City on September 4th, 1939, and it was here she would stay for a while. WW2 was in full swing, and it was now deemed too dangerous to return to England as there would be German U-boats all over. The ship would sit there for months until the order was finally received that she was to be transformed into a warship. All the nice furnishings within the ship were ripped out and replaced with things such as bunks, weaponry, and various other war-related items. The ship was coated in gray paint. Worried that there might be German spies lurking around New York, the crew was told that if anyone asked what was happening to the ship, to simply say it was becoming a training vessel for the Canadian Royal Flying Corps. On March 21st, 1940, after months of waiting, the Queen Mary took to sea again, this time heading to Australia, stopping first in Cape Town, South Africa. When it got to Australia, that was where she would finish her transition into a military craft. From Australia, the ship set off on its first mission. It was headed to Scotland with 5,500 soldiers on board. Their plan was to help the French fend off the German offensive, undock in Scotland, and then the troops would be quickly transported to France. But by the time they had arrived in Scotland, France had been pretty much overrun. It was decided that the new troops would stay to protect the British Isles. The ship then spent the next several months carrying troops and supplies nearly all over the world: Singapore, Bombay, Sydney. The following year, she would even head to Egypt with soldiers and supplies after the Italians had invaded Egypt. When America joined the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor, she began to carry American troops for the first time as well, even making history on August 2nd, 1942, when she carried the 1st Armored Infantry Division, the first time an entire division was carried on a single ship. She spent a lot of time in the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, the South Pacific, and keep in mind, there is no AC on this ship because she was built for the North Atlantic.
Oh.
Many crewmen succumbed to heat exhaustion and strokes. Many even died.
Yeah.
To this day, the exact number of people who perished on board simply from the heat is unknown, but it is most likely very high.
Yeah, I mean, those rooms, like the lower decks that you
Hot.
get unbelievably
Hot.
like they're like ovens.
Ovens, truly.
Oh my God.
Truly.
Wow.
While serving in WW2, the Queen Mary was given the nickname the Gray Ghost because of her speed. Even Hitler himself was made aware specifically of the Queen Mary and her sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth, and he put out sizable bounties for their destruction. Any U-boat captain who destroyed one of the ships would be rewarded $250,000, as well as the Iron Cross, which was Germany's highest military award at the time. But even the notorious U-boats could only travel at about 11 knots when on the surface of the water, and only around 7 knots when submerged. For perspective, the Queen Mary could average over 30 knots. She was fast, baby.
Wow, very fast.
But this does not mean that the Queen Mary did not see tragedy. In fact, she was part of what my source says was one of the worst maritime disasters for the British during World War II. On October 2nd, 1942, she was blazing along at a speed of 28 knots. She was moving in a zigzag pattern, which was normal as it was usual procedure to avoid attacks from U-boats. That day, she was to meet up with an escort fleet, and they were at the rendezvous point. One of the ships that was part of this escort fleet was a light anti-aircraft cruiser called the HMS Kurokawa. When the Queen Mary arrived, they attempted matching its speed and zigzag pattern, which was common protocol. Now, the Kurokawa was getting closer to the Queen Mary than was necessary, and to this day it's unsure why. Some speculate they wanted to get close enough to get a photo of the impressive ship, but that sounds sort of silly to me.
Yeah.
Either way, what came next was disaster. The speed of the Queen Mary was so fast that the Kurokawa could hardly keep up, especially during the zigzag pattern. When the Queen Mary made her turn, the Kurokawa was unable to turn quick enough. The bow of the Queen Mary struck the Kurokawa directly midship and cut it clean in half.
Oh my God.
The Queen Mary didn't even have time to slow down as she cut right through the other ship and just kept sailing straight to her port. Of the 439 men on board the Kurokawa, 338 died.
Oh my God.
The captain did live and would later face an inquest as to why he captained the ship so poorly. In December of 1942, the Queen Mary was hit by a rogue wave off the coast of Scotland. It's estimated that this wave was up to 92 feet tall. It hit the ship with such force that everyone on board was tossed about like toys. The ship tilted at a 52-degree angle, which any further would have totally capsized the ship.
Oh my, that's my nightmare. That's my true nightmare.
When this happened, a man named Paul Gallico was on board working as a war correspondent. This terrifying ordeal inspired him to later write his famous novel, The Poseidon Adventure, which went on to become a movie as well. Also, it should be known that in July of 1943, the Queen Mary set a maritime record that is still unbeaten to this day. She set off from New York carrying a total of 16,683 men on board. 15,740 of them were troops and 943 of them were crew. It was a 5-day journey to Scotland. Can you imagine how uncomfortable that would have been?
Oh, God.
To this day, apparently, it's still the biggest number in one crossing
on
one
my
ship.
God. That's insane.
And wouldn't you know it, Winston Churchill himself would sail almost exclusively on the Queen Mary during World War II. Also, as a precaution to fool any possible spies on board, he would go by the name Colonel Warden whenever he was on the ship. There was even a special lifeboat on board meant only for him, and it was decked out with a .303 machine gun. It was on the ship that Churchill actually signed the orders for D-Day. Imagine the amount of stress that would entail, because you know that with the single stroke of a pen, people are going to die, whether the mission is successful or not. So it's no wonder that many say Churchill may still linger on the ship to this day. It's said that when in or near the room that used to be his suite, folks will often smell cigar smoke in the air and hear the sound of someone pacing, mumbling nervously.
Oh.
So before we move on from her World War II history, I wanted to read directly from the source the last paragraph from this chapter, as I think it sums up this era of her time very well.
Okay.
When World War II ended, no other ship in any navy had done more to help hasten the end of hostilities. The Queen Mary alone had played a part in every major campaign of the European theater of operations, as well as in defense of Singapore and North Africa. She became the first ship in history to carry 10,000 people in a single voyage, the first to carry a fully equipped Army division, and the only ship still to this date to carry over 16,000 passengers on a single voyage, all while being hunted by the combined forces of Germany, Italy, and Japan. In all her time at war, sailing 600,000 nautical miles and with a bounty on her head, the RMS Queen Mary was never fired upon, never fired her guns in anger, and never lost a single passenger to enemy action. She truly was the Gray Ghost.
Wow.
Well, there you go. In the couple decades that followed World War II, the Queen Mary had what many considered to be her golden age. She was turned back into an ocean liner and was decked out in the finest of amenities. But as the years went by, commercial flight became more prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
Less and less people were taking ships as a means of crossing large bodies of water. On May 8, 1967, then Captain William Law was notified by radio to open a sealed envelope that was in his possession. He turned to his department heads and read the letter aloud. The RMS Queen Mary will be retired in the autumn.
Wow.
Ideas about what to do with the ship were tossed around, and a lot of them were kind of crazy. For example, one idea was put forth that the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth should be welded together to create the world's largest catamaran.
Oh, okay.
Another idea was to permanently park it in the Thames to be used as housing for London's homeless.
Oh, okay. That's kind of, okay.
I mean, that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Another idea was to take it to the Bahamas and sink it so it could be used as a fish hatchery.
Oh my God, these ideas, I mean, oh my God.
But in the end, the city of Long Beach, California won the day with a bid of $3.45 million. On December 9th, 1967 at 11 a.m., the Queen Mary docked for the last time, coming to rest in Long Beach, California. In her 31 years as a working ship, the Queen Mary crossed the Atlantic 1,001 times, sailed 3,794,017 nautical miles, and carried over 2,115,000 passengers.
Wow.
Over the next few years, the ship was turned into essentially a floating building that would be used as a hotel and tourist destination, complete with a museum, restaurants, and shopping. And up until this day, it has seen many owners, including Hyatt and Disney.
Yes. And speaking of Disney, it was actually, the Queen Mary was used to film the part where Dennis Quaid and Natasha Richardson are getting married. They get married in the movie on the Queen Elizabeth II, but they filmed that part on the Queen Mary.
Oh, so it's the new Parent Trap. Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, after 31 years of constant traveling around the world, the Queen Mary was finally at rest for good. And this finally brings us to the haunting portion of our show.
Here we go. Because you gotta get the backstory.
You gotta get it. You gotta get it.
To really know, you gotta have it to really know what the hell you're even talking about.
That's right, folks. So buckle up, because here we go.
Fuck.
Just think about all the history we have just crammed into the first part of our episode. And by the way, if you want the, get the book, read it, because obviously I am abridging everything to fit into the episode.
Of course.
Incredible history. Countless lives came and went on board the ship, and while on board, people experienced the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Mm-hmm. It's no wonder that the place is said to be absolutely saturated with paranormal activity, and like we said earlier, consider the obvious fact that we're talking about a ship that sits on water.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Water always seems to be a conductor of paranormal activity, and the source also points out that for all the deaths that we know for sure happened on board the Queen Mary, there are probably countless more that were swept under the rug by the Cunard White Star Line Company.
Oh yeah, big time.
Almost immediately, when the ship came to Long Beach and the people began transforming it into an attraction, weird shit was going on. Workers reported seeing figures that would vanish into thin air, the sound of voices having conversations when there was no one there. Why all the activity suddenly jump-started once the ship finally finished sailing is unknown, but some speculate that perhaps the spirits on board had always been on board, but that there was something about the ship no longer sailing that set everything in motion. A lot like how they say when you start renovating an old house and how it can stir up paranormal activity. Perhaps taking away the ship's purpose of being a ship triggered the specters on board, many of which worked on the ship. And while no one is for sure how many entities are actually on board, the late Peter James, a renowned psychic, said that there were perhaps at least 600 spirits on board and many more that have yet to be discovered. So let's start with Jackie.
Jackie. Okay, Jackie. Let's hear it.
Jacqueline Torin, to be exact, but many just call her Jackie. This is the spirit of a young girl believed to be only 5 or 6 years old. It was actually psychic Peter James who discovered the spirit of Jackie back in 1991 while he was there with a film crew investigating the Royal Theatre. When Peter called out asking who the spirit was communicating with them, they audibly received the response, "Meet me in the pool." Peter was confused because what they didn't know at the time was the room they were actually in had actually been where the second-class pool was.
Oh.
So Peter went to where the first-class pool was located, and with a camera crew fully present, Peter apparently had a 10-minute conversation with this entity. As it was caught on tape, this was actually what sort of made Peter James a well-known commodity, and it actually spawned the hit paranormal TV show, Sightings.
Oh, okay.
Over the years since, many have been successful in communicating with the spirit of young Jackie, and she seems to have no problem sparing time to chat. She's said to be very playful, oftentimes playing peekaboo in the upstairs balcony. My source even has a photo that was snapped during one of these sessions, and you can see what looks like a little girl peeking over the rail of the balcony. It's said that when spotted, she will quickly duck out of sight, only to reappear moments later in a completely different part of the room. Those who haven't seen her have still reported hearing what sounded like a little girl calling out to her mother. It is believed that her spirit is continuously looking for her mother, and while not much is known, all we know is just that she drowned in the second-class pool and mostly hangs out in the first-class pool. But she has popped up randomly in all areas of the ship as well. One investigator named Frank Barucos told of a unique encounter he had with Jackie. It is his belief that there is actually a vortex of sorts located near the dressing rooms of the first-class pool from which the entities cross in and out of our world.
Oh.
Well, one night Frank was in the pool room and he called out asking Jackie to appear. He quickly received a very audible response that was the voice of a young girl saying, "No." He then asked if she could make the pool room colder as a sign of her presence. Once again, he was simply told, "No." She no longer spoke after that, but the lights in the room then began to flicker. And they had been in that room for an hour, and the lights were fine before that moment. Frank also says there is a fast-moving black mass that is often also seen in the pool room. The question is that something separate from the spirit of Jackie? Or is this black mass something sinister that pretends to be a little girl as a way of getting people to let their guard down?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we've heard of that before.
Yes, we have.
These things can happen.
Now, we're going to talk about a spirit known as Sarah.
Okay.
Even less is known about Sarah than is known about Jackie, but it is believed that she is also the spirit of a young girl, perhaps around the ages of 6, 7, or 8. Little older than Jackie, but still a young girl. Yet many investigators will claim that despite that, she will often manifest herself to appear as a teenager. It is also known that Sarah seems to have taken a sort of protective role over Jackie, almost like a big sister. Often when investigators are asking Jackie questions, it's said that Sarah will sometimes harshly butt into conversations saying no, as if she's saying, "Conversation's over." She's been known to get aggressive and territorial as well, as even Peter James claimed that she scratched him before. She's been known to even scare people enough to send them running out of the pool room. But as she got more acquainted with Peter, he said she became much less guarded and more friendly. It's believed she may have drowned in one of the pools back in 1949, but no one is really sure. But there is a dark theory that both Jackie and Sarah were actually murdered on board the ship, and that the ghost of their murderer still haunts the ship as well, and we'll get to that later.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, this next ghost goes by one name, Grumpy. His full name is apparently Grumpy the Growling Ghost.
Oh, wow.
But we'll just go with Grumpy.
All right.
The name Grumpy was actually given to him by paranormal investigator Bob Davis of Planet Paranormal, who was the first to identify him. And while growling seems sinister, they believe he's actually doing it jokingly. They do get the impression that Grumpy wants to be left alone, but that when he growls, he's more being silly. which I think is interesting. Most often he is encountered in the storage area located beneath the stairs in the first-class pool area. You'll notice a lot of the hauntings take place near the pools, which, is it because they drown there, or is it because, as we know, water?
The water, yeah.
But he's also been heard in the hallways leading away from the pool room, as well as in the green room located beneath the pool. Now, no one is actually certain who Grumpy actually was in life. The best guess is that he was perhaps once a captain on board the ship. But there's another theory that many psychics have put forth, that Grumpy actually murdered a woman on the ship during life. It's true that a woman's body was once found in that storage room where Grumpy usually hangs out. After murdering the woman, the man took his own life. Many believe his spirit is still on the ship and that he remains there because he's scared to pass on because of what he did in life.
Yeah.
One psychic sensed that the man's name was maybe Roland, but there's no way to confirm that. But when one smells cigar smoke near the pool storage area or in the hallways or green room, they know that Grumpy is nearby. And keep in mind, today, the Queen Mary is obviously there's no smoking.
Right, yeah.
The place has been completely refurbished, any lingering smoke from back in the day.
Oh, yeah. What the heck?
Next, let's talk about a specter known as William Eric Stark.
Oh, okay.
And Stark was once a senior second officer on board the Queen Mary. One day, Stark had just gotten off of duty when the captain asked him for a favor. There were a couple new crew officers on board, and the captain asked that Stark would sort of make an effort to make them feel welcome, and Stark was happy to oblige. He found the pair of officers and told them to stop by his cabin later for a drink. Well, back in his quarters, Stark had a steward go grab a bottle of gin for the room that he could share with the officers. Thinking on his feet, the steward went to a nearby room, and luckily there was a full bottle of gin, the first room he went to. But what the steward didn't know was that the officer who resided in that room had already drank the bottle of gin. And to cover up that fact, he had filled up the bottle with tetrahydrochloride, a very strong cleaning chemical that is deadly if ingested.
Oh no.
Not knowing any better, the steward brought Stark the bottle, and while waiting for his guests to arrive, Stark poured himself a drink mixed with some lime juice. When the officers arrived, he poured them a drink, and before they drank, they realized this was definitely not gin. By the next day, Stark was violently ill and was taken to the medical ward for treatment. The two officers told the doctors what Stark had ingested, and unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. Over the next 2 days, the medical staff made Stark as comfortable as they possibly could, but he died in agony.
Oh, God.
Today, Officer Stark's ghost is most often seen in and around the captain's quarters or walking along the promenade deck. Visitors will often report hearing choking sounds around where the hospital ward once was. Some even think that Grumpy might actually be the ghost of Stark who grunts and growls in agony.
Oh.
Still walking the decks of the Queen Mary looking for a bottle of gin. Well, let's next talk about the ghost of John Petter.
Okay.
Back in 1966, John worked in the engine room of the Queen Mary at the age of only 16. Needless to say, working in the sweltering heat of the engine room and boiler rooms was quite dangerous and certainly not easy work. The work was tedious and the shifts lasted for hours. Naturally, these workers would come up with ways to pass the time. And of course, many of these pastimes were kind of dangerous. One such activity was a sort of game of chicken. Occasionally, the captain would conduct standard drills in which the watertight doors on the ship would be sealed. We had to do that, remember?
Oh, yeah.
When we worked on a cruise ship, we had watertight doors, and they tell you, they warn you.
Oh, yeah.
These doors, it's not like a garage door that has a sensor, it'll see,
Oh, yeah.
These doors, because their purpose is to keep the ship from sinking, they fucking shut no matter what.
Oh, yeah, no, it will cut you in half.
Cut you in half, like a pair of fucking scissors.
Yeah.
Well, when this would happen, these drills, an alarm would sound, and these huge doors would slowly close. And it was dangerous because if something got in the way, as I said, there was nothing to stop it. As a test of nerve, the crewmen would often dash through the door as it was closing.
Oh my God, why would they do that?
One unfortunate day, John Petter attempted such a thing and was unsuccessful.
Oh.
The 16-year-old was crushed by watertight door number 13. To this day, his spirit is said to hang around the area of door 13. It's said he seems to display a sort of aloofness towards men, but is very fond of the ladies.
Oh, come on.
Many female visitors to the Queen Mary have reported feeling their hair being touched or their ears tickled.
Oh.
Sometimes even the feeling of someone breathing on their cheeks.
Oh, I don't like that.
When near door 13, folks will often report hearing screams or moans or the sound of a man speaking in a whisper. There's another lesser-known specter who is said to haunt the area around door 13, but details of this story are sparse. But it is said that a young man named John Mackenzie was working on the ship back in 1942, and the legend goes that he was so hated by his crewmates that they held his arms open astride door 13 as it closed on him, crushing him to death.
Oh, God.
Now, this story cannot be confirmed, but it is one that has circulated before the Queen Mary even came to dock at Long Beach.
Wow.
I think the John Petter story is, well, that one we know for sure happened.
Yeah.
Because that's in the ship records. I mean, this, not to say that didn't happen, but like, that might be an urban, I mean, what an awful, doesn't matter how bad the prick is. I mean, what a fucking way to do it. You know, I mean, just shoot the fucking guy or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you hate him that much, think of something else, like Jesus.
Yeah.
Next, let's talk about Jack and Terrence. There are two spirits that were discovered by two paranormal investigators, Rob and Ann Wolodarski. They are said to reside in the first-class pool area and are perhaps two soldiers who perished during World War II. They are known as Jack and Terrence, and as we know, the ship was designed for the chilly North Atlantic. And when it ventured into hotter parts of the world, without AC, many succumbed to heat exposure. But what's interesting about these two entities is that they always manifest together, never separate. This leads many to believe that perhaps they were friends who perished together. When they are spotted, it is usually accompanied by a drastic increase in temperature, and people will report a tugging or tapping feeling as if they are trying to get your attention. Next, let's talk about one of my favorites, the Lady in White.
Oh, yes.
This is said to be the specter of a beautiful woman who no one knows who she is, but of course, she is dressed in a gorgeous white evening gown. Most often, she is seen dancing in the Queen's salon to unheard music. This was where the main lounge once was, where the rich and famous would hang out, dance, and listen to music. Often, when guests are on board, as they are passing by the salon, they will witness her gliding across the floor once again, seeming to be dancing to a song that only she can hear. The moment anyone takes a step forward to approach her, she vanishes into thin air by fading away right before your very eyes. But it's not just the Queen's Lounge where she is seen, as she often makes her way to various other parts of the ship. Today, at the starboard side bar sits a piano that once was in the main lounge. Often she's also spotted here near the piano, perhaps because it was once part of the main lounge where people were entertained and maybe she is attracted to it in some way. Perhaps it was something that gave her great joy. She's sometimes also spotted in the isolation ward. Another interesting point to make is that the Lady in White seems to have taken on a sort of maternal role for the other ghosts, Jackie and Sarah, the young girls.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oftentimes, when visitors are heading down to the first-class pool area, they will hear the sound of a woman singing, accompanied by the sound of a young girl humming along. It is believed the woman singing is the Lady in White, and she is comforting the younger spirits on board.
Okay.
Which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, that's nice.
Next, one we briefly mentioned, but we're going to go a little more in depth, is John Henry.
Oh, right.
Late psychic Peter James is the one who suggested he might be the spirit of one of the welders who were found dead after they went missing for 3 years. But others have speculated that this is perhaps the ghost of another crewman who was killed when a pipe burst and he was scalded to death. It was a steam pipe.
Oh, God.
Now, the specter is most often encountered in the green room, which was at one time one of the ship's generator rooms until it was converted into a dressing room for performers on board. Whatever the case may be, John Henry is another specter who is said to love the ladies.
Oh my God.
Many female visitors who are in the green room will report the feeling of unseen hands touching their hair or cheeks.
No.
Sometimes even a little pinch on the ass.
Okay, you know what? Come on.
Men, though, report being on the receiving end of more aggressive attention.
Whoa.
Often they report getting shoved or tugged on until they finally leave the room. Apparently, inside the green room, there is actually a square hole in the ceiling. I'm not sure why. Perhaps it was once like where piping or ventilation ran through. But regardless, people will often report seeing glowing eyes.
No.
Looking down at them through the hole.
Nope.
Others have even reported seeing John Henry's whole face
No.
and eyes looking down at them. While he has never hurt anyone, he has made it clear that men are not welcome in this area of the ship.
Cover up that damn square.
I know, right? Next, let's talk about the Dude.
Oh, the Dude.
Simply known as the Dude, this entity resides in the nicest restaurant on board the ship, which is called Sir Winston's, where he was first discovered by investigators Robin and Wolodarski. Back in its day as an ocean liner, this area where Sir Winston's was once crew quarters. It's here that visitors will often see a man hanging leisurely around, wearing a top hat and tails. It's theorized that perhaps he was once a refined man of the upper class. He seems to prefer the bar area most often. Visitors who are in this area will report hearing someone behind them clear their throat, as if to get their attention. When they turn around, they see the entity for a mere moment before he vanishes into thin air. It's almost like he's saying, "Oh, excuse me." Or other times he will be seen walking away and turning out of sight down a corridor that leads to the men's room. Folks who quickly rush to the men's room to see if he's there will find it empty. Many speculate that he was an upper-class man who frequented the veranda grill, which was the classiest part of the ship back in the day. Since in the present day, the veranda grill is now a for-rent banquet room, it's believed he has shifted his focus to Sir Winston's, since that is now the classiest place on the ship. Which, side note, interesting that some ghosts will haunt a place like the green room because it was once, the generator room, but somehow the Dude is able to detect luxury even after death.
Oh, yes.
He's always spotted sitting or standing alone, casually watching people with a smile. Not a creepy smile, just a happy smile. It seems that this entity truly enjoys watching people have a good time and enjoy themselves. He's never been threatening toward anyone and seems to genuinely enjoy when guests are present. Kind of like how entities we cover seem to feed off of fear, perhaps he feeds off of the good times.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting thought. I mean, I guess that,
yeah.
yeah.
He likes to watch people enjoy themselves. Like, he'll sit at the bar and watch the visitors. Even today, as they're going on a tour, he'll watch and, he likes seeing he's a people watcher, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
He likes to see what's going on.
We love it.
Now we'll talk about a spirit simply known as the woman in the bathing suit.
Oh.
She's said to be just that, a ghost of a pretty young woman in a bathing suit. They estimate her age to be late 20s, early 30s. The bathing suit itself is said to appear in the style of a 1930s bathing suit.
Okay.
Now, there are apparently a ton of special effects that have been installed in the pool area that are a part of the tours. So many think that this particular ghost doesn't actually exist, but was created for the tour. Regardless, though, there have been many reports of seeing her, so we'll just include her nonetheless.
Okay.
She's spotted on both the upper and lower levels of the first-class pool area and is said to leave behind wet footprints.
Oh.
Some have seen her exit the pool area into the changing rooms, only to check the changing rooms to find no one there. It should be noted that at one time, the Ghost and Legends tour on the ship had a way of manufacturing ghostly wet footprints. But this feature has since been removed, but despite this, wet footprints still appear.
Oh, wow.
Next, let's talk about Daniel.
Okay, Daniel, what's your deal?
Daniel's believed to be a ghost, a young boy of only around 5 or 6 years of age. He's often referred to as the Blue Boy, as he is seen wearing Edwardian-style clothing in an undeniably blue shade. He's most often seen on the promenade deck and in the shopping area of the ship, where it is said he is searching for his parents. Many EVPs have been captured and seem to imply that he is searching for them. It's also important to note that Edwardian fashion went out of style somewhere around 1914, before the ship was even built in the 30s. Many speculate that he is perhaps the child from a poor family who had to dress him in out-of-date clothing.
Oh.
The hope, though, is that one day investigators will find out who he is and be able to reunite him with his parents.
Oh.
Now, let's talk about Dana and Penny.
Dana and Penny, let's go.
The ghosts of two young sisters, Dana and Penny, Dana aged 4, Penny aged 2, very young. According to psychic Peter James, the girls were murdered in room B474 sometime back in 1959. It's said that a man lost his mind or just was severely distraught or something, and in his state murdered his wife and 2 daughters and then killed himself. When the bodies were discovered, the mother and 2 girls were found in bed, having been strangled by some kind of rope or cord. The father was found dead in the bathroom of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The girls are often seen and heard playing on B deck and the surrounding area. Dana seems to be a bit more adventurous, having also been spotted in the cargo hold as well as in the archives section in the forward of the ship. But both girls are often heard calling for their mother, with many assuming that the mother has passed on, and yet the girls have not. Perhaps they don't know she has passed on and are waiting to find her before they do. The girls on occasion are also seen in the green room, the boiler room, and the second-class pool area, and even the Royal Theater. Now, let's talk about another one, simply known as Fedora Dude.
Oh, God. This guy is from 2006.
Now, this one, I know, he's like Jason Mraz. This one is a little more freaky, even freakier than Jason Mraz.
Okay, let's go.
There is a spirit on board, first detected by investigators Bob Davis and his daughter, Katrina, simply known as Fedora Dude. He sports a yellowish tan suit and a bright yellow fedora hat, and is said to be extremely tall. He has hollow, yellow eyes and rotting teeth.
Oh.
He's most often seen in the lobby area of the ship and will smile at those who pass by with a sinister smile. He's said to pass by someone and then turn out of sight down a corridor. When the witness rushes over to the corridor to see if he's there, they will spot him far, far way down the corridor, a distance that would be impossible for a person to travel in just a few moments it takes for the witness to run to the hallway. It's said that he will then turn back and give the witness another creepy smile before fading from sight. No one knows who this man was in life, but everyone agrees that the feeling you get when he is present is one of unease. While most often seen in the ship's lobby, it seems the Fedora Man will appear anywhere in the ship if he feels like it.
Ooh.
Little more creepy. Fedora
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, God. I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah. Now let's talk about a spirit we know very little about. He's simply known as Jeremy. He was discovered once again by Peter James and is often spotted playing with Jackie by the pool. But really, that is all we know about him right now. Similarly, there is the spirit of a little girl named Carrie, who is often heard playing in the boiler room as well as the first-class pool area. She seems to be very shy and rarely is ever heard. Then there is the couple known as David and Sarah. This couple was discovered by Rob and Ann Wildarski and are most often spotted in Sir Winston's and the first-class pool area. They seem to be searching for a lost child, but no one is able to figure out who the child is. They are always seen moving about the ship, always together, and are said to even answer questions directly when addressed by their names. Some have even speculated that they are the parents of the murdered Dana and Penny, and that the children are hiding from them because they're afraid of the dad.
Oh.
But some dismiss this as the guy also murdered his wife too. You would think the spirit of his wife wouldn't want to be near him as well. So who knows?
Who frickin' knows?
Now let's talk about the ghost of Captain John Treasure Jones. Captain John spent most of his life at sea. Having joined the Gould Steamship Company when he was only 16 years old, he worked for 4 years as an apprentice before he went on to work on tram steamers. In 1929, he signed on to work for the White Star Line, and they sent him away for a year of training with the Royal Navy Reserves, but right when he returned was when he was let go because of the Great Depression. John bounced around between companies for a bit before he finally came to the Cunard Company in 1947, and there he rose to the rank of third officer on board the RMS Britannic. He worked on the Britannic until World War II, where he went on to become an accomplished Royal Navy commander. He bounced around on various ships, including the Queen Elizabeth, and even a short stint on the Queen Mary as staff captain, to which he then would return later. Then he was given his own command of the RMS Media, but finally in December of 1965 he was made captain of the RMS Queen Mary. He was her last captain until she was sold to the city of Long Beach. Captain John would retire in August of 1968 at the age of 63 and would later pass away peacefully on May 12, 1993, just 3 weeks shy of his 88th birthday. But of course, it seems as though Captain John has never truly left the ship.
Oh.
Witnesses have encountered him all over the ship, but he is most often seen on the bridge. Often he is seen standing at the ship's wheel, staring silently out to the horizon. Sometimes he is seen on either the port or starboard sides of the ship, looking fore and aft the way one would when docking the ship. Perhaps a residual haunting, maybe? It sounds like to me, at least.
Yeah, it does.
In his captain's quarters, witnesses will report smelling cigar smoke in the air while hearing him hum a tune to himself. Keep in mind, like I said, smoking is not allowed in the Queen Mary today, so the fact you would still smell smoke is weird. In life, Captain John was said to be the definition of professionalism. He is always seen wearing his clean and neatly pressed white captain's uniform. The propeller box area is very interesting, as it is said to be the one place where Captain John can actually be heard speaking. No one is for sure why he visits this area so often, but some speculate that it's because nowadays a huge hole has been cut into the hull of the ship so visitors can see through and see the big propellers.
Oh.
Maybe he's down there going, what the hell is this hole here for? You know.
Yes.
If this is a residual haunting still, maybe it's a replay of something that happened a while ago.
Right.
Now let's talk about shadow people.
Oh, fuck.
Wouldn't you know it, the place is said to be riddled with shadow people. Those little fuckers get everywhere.
Ugh,
They're like sand.
I'm just not surprised. It just, you know,
Yeah.
Oh God.
They're like sand or crumbs in your bed.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They are spotted in all areas of the ship, be it day or night. We already know very well what these things are because we've covered them. The ones spotted on the Queen Mary, though, are said to come in all shapes and sizes, but some shadow people sightings on the ship are different from ones we've heard.
Oh.
Sometimes they are seen actually wearing clothing.
Oh.
With some in trench coats, others in hats and business attire.
Oh.
Some even appear to be in hooded cloaks.
Oh, fuck.
Some have described them as being smoke-like, while others have described them as looking almost like oil on water with a sort of shimmering aura about them. Witnesses have seen them in hallways only to vanish a moment later, or even walk through walls out of sight. Regardless, those who have seen them report a feeling of foreboding that is hard to shake off. And there's also often spotted balls of light on board the Queen Mary, something we've talked about quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
These balls of light are visible to the naked eye and usually range in size from about a grape to even a softball, sometimes even bigger. While they have been reported to appear in all manner of colors, most often they are said to have a sort of blue color to them. These things are seen in almost all areas of the ship. Even the author of my source encountered these things in the green room. He said they were about baseball size and seemed to be a bright blue color and seemed to even have they almost had like a wobble to them, like a up and down, almost like a liquid-like form. They seem to produce their own light, and this can be seen in the dark, so you can actually see light coming off it, like and onto the walls and stuff, like a light bulb. In the cargo hold, there's a special case. It is said that there is a light there that will emerge, and it almost seems to be alive. Sometimes it will zoom around the cargo hold and even float up at the ceiling, almost like stars. Now, there have obviously been countless encounters on board the Queen Mary, and we are going to talk about many of those encounters in this month's Patreon episode.
Oh.
But I figured I would leave you with a little taste of one.
Okay.
This was an experience on board the Queen Mary by a man named Lee Frankel, and I will read it to you directly from my source. I was at the Queen Mary for a meeting with my company in January 2013. I checked into the hotel and was given my room key and then headed to the elevator. When I got there, the captain of the boat in his white uniform and hat was already waiting for the car to arrive, and we both stood there until the doors opened. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside and the captain followed. I asked him if I could press a floor button for him, and he just stood there staring at me without reply. When we arrived at my floor, I got out, wished him a nice day, and proceeded to my room. Later that night, a group of co-workers and I were talking to one of the women at the front desk who was telling us about the different tours that the ship offered, including the ghost tour. I laughed and said that the captain should lead the tour because he was kind of creepy looking and not very responsive. She then went on to tell us that the ship had no captain because it was not a ship anymore. It was designated as a building, and that they had no one working that day who would have been dressed as such. She went on to tell us that several of the ship's past captains do haunt the ship, however. I told her, no, that's not possible. At which point, one of her co-workers said, "Sir, there is no living captain."
Wow. That's spooky.
Very spooky.
Ooh. And I was thinking that too. As soon as you said captain, I was like, oh, I wonder if the ship still has a captain. I was like, oh. And then it was like, oh no.
That's right.
Oh my God. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for doing that fantastic research.
Of course.
And putting together one hell of an episode.
Well, it was my pleasure. And let me tell you, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind setting sail with.
Okay.
Folks, give it on up for the names of our top tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish face Fiat Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the vivacious Vicky McHugh, the tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the notorious Nicholas Barker, the terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the loathsome Johnny Love, the carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the killer stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the awfully awesome Annie, the murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the maniacal Laura Maynard, the vicious Karen Van Buren, the arch nemesis Aaron Bird, the sadistic Sergio Castillo, the rapscallion Ryan Crum, the devilish Chris Doucette, the psycho Sam, the electric Emily Jeong, the ghoulish Gert Hankum, the renegade Corey Ramos, the crazed Carlos, the antagonist Andrew Park, the monstrous Michaela Schur, the witchy wonder J.P. Weimer, and the freaky Ben Forsyth.
Whoa. Thank you so much to all of you. You are just the best. Our top tier Patreon subscribers. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you for being you. If you want to be like them, please reach out. Okay, go on to patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
Please do.
Please remember to like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, post about us on social media, tell a friend about us, tell a coworker about us, anything like that. It really helps the show, and we just appreciate you big time.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.